keep on trying to.
And then let me know if you want to click start the webinar or if I should.
And it goes. So, okay, ladies, here we go. Okay, everybody, I have opened the webinar, so I'm hoping to start seeing some of you coming in, and hope everybody's doing well. Here in Jacksonville, it's a beautiful day. And I think everybody's just waiting for 1 o'clock. I think I've opened the webinar by now. Hello, for those that are coming in, thank you for being here. Just waiting for just about 1 more minute, and then we are going to get started. Okay, not that many in yet. So I am going to get started because I don't want to get behind. So for you that are here, welcome. H-1B Cap 2023, you were not selected. What options to consider? And there are many options out there. The issue is really which one will work for you in particular. So in this webinar, we're going to talk options beyond the H-1B. The main option really out there is typically ends up being the F1 student CPP or STEM, if you qualify for STEM. Then we're going to talk about other options. And I kind of put it in red because I received one of, and again, for some of you that are on the webinar, you may have sent questions ahead of time, which I totally appreciate because again, it helps me make this more relevant to you. And somebody wrote, you know, what options do we have beyond the traditional? And I was like, okay, I mean, I don't think that there is a traditional option necessarily, because there are so many, but eventually at the end of the day, there's just, if they're so specific to the person. So I always learn that the same way that you are here to learn. For those of you that are in the webinar, just for the purposes of you know, interaction and getting you to pay attention to the lecture and not necessarily other things, why don't you tell me in the chat what options have you considered for yourselves? I'm going to give you a few minutes. So go ahead and there's no right or wrong, because frankly, every year when I do this, I learn of a new option that maybe I had not considered, but because of that, for a national's particular situation, you know, it was made possible. So what other things have you considered for yourself, or have you heard others doing? Come on. Give me some options on the chat. Are you with me? Not seeing many other interactions out there. Green card. Okay, awesome. Right, that's 01, fabulous. Thank you so much for putting that out there. Okay, because we're gonna, and again, I am trying to make this, okay, 01, dependent, visa, okay? Anything else? Because again, I want to make this as specific to you as I can. And okay, how many times can we apply to OPT? So PhD and okay, so going back to school. For that person that said, how many times can we apply to OPT? Did you mean H-1B or OPT? OPT. I may be able to clarify that, but my understanding, like if I go back to get, okay, yeah, sure, okay. Yeah, because you only have one OPT after your bachelor's. And I think Ellen can clarify this, but I believe is per degree level. So if you just did a master's on something, so that's what, O1B. So thanks, Ellen, for jumping in, because that's, so for that question, you can only get OPT per degree level, okay? So if you are considering going to another degree to get OPT, if you have a master's, you would need to go to a PhD, okay? So I didn't use my OPT after my bachelor's, but I'm using it, my master's OPT right now, okay? So that's a very specific situation. And yeah, so Ellen is chiming in. So I'm not going to get caught up with that one specifically because that's like I said, a very specific situation that we can address some more. But just know for some of you that are considering the OPT, it is per degree level, okay? But I appreciate all of you that put those options out there. I wrote them out. And as we go through this, I am going to make an emphasis on those, okay? So we're going to talk about the options that you talked about, and probably there's a few more in here. And then will there be a second or a third lottery? So there is Ellen, who is in the chat and has already helped with some of the questions. And I am so grateful that we have a team that is very engaged in various ways, and Danny's helping with the logistics of the IT technology. Alan is managing the chat, and that helps me more concentrate on what I'm saying to you. And Tyra is already working on some of the H-1B petitions that were already selected. But I know she's also attending the webinar, and here I am myself, Giselle Carson, who some of you do not interact directly with me because I'm so grateful, I guess, or honored or gifted that I have fabulous staff, immigration paralegals and assistants that are dealing with you on a day-to-day basis. But know that I'm always here for you and for them, okay? So again, thank you for being here. And let's see, okay. So beyond the H-1B, so the H-1B is gone. So what do we talk about? So this is a spiral of options out there. Some of you already mentioned some of them, the O1, the OPT, the green card, dependent visa. So we'll talk about all of that. And there is a few others out there. One of the main things that will potentially happen, but I don't want you to put all your hopes in the second lottery. There is likely to be a second lottery. So what happened last year, if some of you know or were around, and what is going to happen this year, no matter what. So we have 90 days to file the petitions, the H-1B petitions for those that were selected. Okay, so that's a very short timeline. It seems like forever, but it's not. Once if you have significant amount of cases or something else happen, it's a tight deadline. And what happens is invariably June 30th comes around and petitions that were, registrations that were selected do not get petitions filed, or the petitions that are filed are incomplete and they never get approved. So those numbers come back into the lottery to pull from the people that were registered already, all of you. If you were already registered under the, prior to March 31st, you would be entered into a second lottery, if there is one, which is, it sounds like there would be, in July, okay? And last year we had a fair amount of people that were selected in July. And then last year we also had a third round of lottery in November that no one expected, but USCIS just issued another, released a whole bunch of new notices of receipt. And that one was very small lottery selection. The July one was more meaningful. So there is hope, but again, this is like kind of like a wish that could happen, but you cannot count on it. If it happens, it's fabulous. So we do need to look at the other options that are out there for you. So one of those options, and no one actually mentioned day one CPP, which in a way I'm glad, because for some people, day one CPP would be the only option they have. And last year, I had a few people going to day one CPP. I will explain a little bit more about day one CPP. And I also have a video that I did about day one CPP that will be provided to you as part of the resources that you will get from attending the webinar. In no shape or form, I am a proponent of using CPP as the day one CPP as the first option that you're going to look at. And when you listen to the video, watch the video that you will get, you'll understand why. There is pros and cons. The list of cons is probably longer than the list of pros, but the benefit is, of course, that you could potentially stay in the United States, continue to study, because you would be going back to school for a master's degree, at least a graduate level of some sort. And as part of your curriculum of studies, it will include a requirement to have CPP as part of that. Not after you engage in 1 full year of studies, which is the traditional CPP, but under day one CPP, as the name suggests, you would be entitled to study and work from day one of going back to school. But that is, like I said, the biggest benefit, but there is also a lot of negative about day one CPP, and you have to be very, very, very careful if that is one of the options that you are exploring, and particularly if that's the one you end up deciding to take. So watch the video, and again, make sure that you go in it with doing a lot of due diligence. The second option, to some degree, is the cap gap, but that will not apply to you because you were not selected. But there are people that were selected, but also will run out of a status. So we're using the cap gap. And as some of you mentioned, the OPT option of going back to school for a next level of education and then obtaining OPT. But that OPT will not come until after, so say you have a bachelor's degree and you're going for a master's, that OPT will not come until until you finish your degrees at the end of your 2 years. So it's a long way out there. That's why I kind of question the OPT, but obviously, yeah, it is an option. And then of course the STEM OPT, that if you were my prior presentation, I highly, highly recommend to anyone that can go into, that has the opportunity to apply for STEM OPT, to use it. Only for designated US STEM degrees. So it's not like, it sounds like a STEM and it is the STEM for immigration purposes. However, one of the benefits is USCIS just increase the designated STEM majors. So that is something that you need to look at to see how does that apply to you. So you need to go back to your DSO and look and see what options are there for you. The other thing about a STEM OPT, and this, I've had this conversation many times with foreign nationals, if you are considering going back to school for a master's degree, please explore. And there are not many, there's just a few of them, but now more, since USCIS has increased the designation of STEM degrees. Explore going back and obtaining a degree. If you're going back because you have to, try to enrolling in a STEM degree rather than just a degree that does not qualify for STEM. There are so many benefits. And frankly, I think for many of you, you're not going back to school because, I mean, of course, you've won the training, it's something else that you're going to add to your resume. But if you had obtained an H-1B, chances are that you may not be going back to school to get a STEM degree. So you're going back to school, and one of the considerations is you're going to school because you want to enhance your opportunities to stay in the United States and work and get a work visa. So please explore the options for a STEM OPT, for a STEM degree, if you're considering going back to school, okay? Now, one of the, and I think, Ellen, what if the company I work for is not part of? Yeah, very good question. And that is one of the things that I put at the bottom here on the STEM OPT, because that happened to me 2 years ago. The foreign national had the STEM qualifying designated STEM major, but the employer was not enrolling E-Verify. And we went through, I spoke with the employer as to the benefits of E-Verify, the cons of E-Verify, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, the employer decided not to enroll in E-Verify, and that person was not able to obtain the benefits of the STEM OPT. So that is a very good question. Thank you for putting it out there. And like I said, I have it here as one of those in red. You need to make sure that if this is an option that you're exploring, that your employer is enrolled in E-Verify or willing to enroll in E-Verify. And that there's a lot of things that have to go into that consideration. Primarily employers, unless they're required to be enrolled in E-Verify, they're not going to. But there are many states where it is required. And there is in many states where if you have federal contracts or state contracts or other things that you have to enroll in E-Verify. So good point, okay? So that is what we have for STEM OPT and STEM OPT. This is kind of, again, if you are in the process of considering a STEM OPT, know that it is that the timeline is very tight and you need to apply early, because if you wait until the last minute, considering the delays with the mail, even though you've done everything right, if USCIS gets the STEM OPT application 1 day late, it will get denied. And that would be a huge loss. Maybe none of you here are, this applies to you, but if you have any friends that are, STEM OPT is the option, make sure that you pass along the message that the timeline is critical. Okay, so I said to you, I have a few slides here on the CPT, Day 1 CPT. I believe these slides are also on the presentation that you will get as part of attending. So I'm not going to go into a lot of details into the traditional CPT, Day 1 CPT. But again, the two main things that I want you to know or understand is CPT.C is for training, and it's the curriculum. Whatever you're engaged in has to be directly related to your curriculum, to your established course of studies. And typically on a traditional CPT, you would have to have completed 1 full academic year before you're entitled to apply for CPT. Under the Day 1 CPT, potentially the main benefit is you do not have to complete that full year of academic studies. you will go directly from work study from the first, from the beginning of the year. It's only available for graduate or higher levels of study, and the program most require this work experience for graduation. A lot more goes into this. Again, if you're interested or looking into this, watch the video that you would get. And this is kind of the CPT application process that, again, I think is on the other video. So I'm going to move on from here because I don't remember anyone mentioning they want CPT. So somebody mentioned the L1. The L1 is a very strong option, but it would only apply. In fact, I think I'm doing 2 or 3 Ls right now that were not selected last year as H's. And so what needs to happen for an L is, and not everybody will be able to do this because you have to be working for an employer that is a global employer, that has a company overseas that is related to the company in the United States. You will need to actually travel and live and work abroad. That doesn't, it's not that, it's easier said than done. But for example, you may be a, Chinese national or Indian national or whatever, Mexican national. And the company that you're going to be working for has an office and a, full business company outside of the United States in your country of birth. If that were to exist and you were able to go work for that company for a year, because you would need to be working for that company for at least 1 year before the L can become feasible, then there is a relationship between the two companies. Maybe the US company is the parent of the company abroad is the affiliate, the subsidiary, or vice versa. So you have to have a qualifying relationship. That's kind of what the map and the arrows mean. Typically, in the best case scenario, so there is 2 L's. There is one that is L in a managerial capacity, which is it's a little bit easier to show for USCIS purposes, because then you are a manager of a function or a manager of a group of people, even if it's a small group of people. And that's why I have an organizational chart on the slide. And then you're coming to the United States, either on a specialized knowledge capacity to eventually become a manager, a senior person in some sort of a senior managerial role. That is probably the best case scenario for the L. If you are abroad in a specialized knowledge capacity, that it's fine, it's doable, but it's just a harder burden of proof for USCIS. But for whatever, if it is the option that you and your employer choose, and you're one of our clients, we would work with you as to what needs to happen to facilitate this happening. Okay. So again, the basic requirements for an L, does abroad refer to my home country and anywhere that is not in the United States? Yeah, so good question. The reason I mention home country is because, so that's a good question to clarify. Say you're going to work not in your home country. Say you're, the company doesn't have operations in your home country. They have operations in the UK, which is fine. But then you would have to get a UK work visa to work there for a year before you can transfer to the United States. So doable, but it just adds another layer of complications. So if you were going back to your home country, well, you're a native country, you don't need work authorization to work there. That's the only reason I made that notation. So, but yeah, it could be anywhere in the world. It just adds a layer of complexity. So qualifying relationship between the two entities, the entity abroad and the entity in the United States. You have to spend at least 1 full year working abroad in order to qualify. There's only 2, you have to be working abroad as either a manager or in a specialized knowledge capacity. meaning that you're using proprietary knowledge that the company has, maybe you're working with some products that have been patented by the organization or the company, something that cannot be just found in the US market. That's what gives you the specialized knowledge. And then again, you transfer to the United States, either in the specialized knowledge or as a manager. And that's what, business operations, okay? All right, so that's the L, which somebody is considering. Then somebody else mentioned the O1. Now, know that there is two O1s. There is O1A, extraordinary ability, and O1B, which is also extraordinary ability, but it's more in the arts, okay? So we use O1B quite often for architects, designers, because there is more art involved in that. We use O1As for business people, for athletes, for scientists, professors sometimes. So again, know that there is, there's a flavor for O1s, but the whole idea of an O is that you are at the top of your field. You have done unique work. The work that you have done and will continue to do is going to contribute to the benefit of your employer, but not just your employer. You really have to show that what you're doing is to the benefit of your employer plus the United States or the world. So say that you have published articles, and those articles are being peer reviewed by people around the world because it's of interest to others. So you're contributing to the knowledge and to the particular field around the world. So that kind of brings you up to that extraordinary ability. You would have to have played a role or will play a role in a critical capacity. For example, we're working on an O right now, and he's, I think his title is project manager, but we added something to it like urban designer or human-centric design or something to that effect. We need to find a niche for your O. So to kind of, there could be many designers, but there's less designers that is specialized, say, in human-centric design or whatever that may be. So that makes it easier for you to show that you're at the top of the field. And we would have to show that your role, you have played a critical role because you're, making designs or working on projects that, again, have this human-centric focus that are impacting, significantly impacting your employer by the value that the contract is. So say $1 million project, or is something that is changing. In this particular case, we're working with someone that has designed some very unique things for the airport. And that has been covered by the media because it's very unique. So those are the kind of things that we would have to explore in order to make an O1 possible, okay? So we talked about the O1, we talked about the O1B, we talked about the OPT. Let's see what is next. Okay, no one mentioned this. I have it here because at least every year I have this as one of the options that comes up. I would never recommend to any of you or anybody else to get married just to receive a green card. It's certainly not worth it for your life, but it's also can ruin your whole immigration process if it's not for true love. But quite often, many of you are young and are dating and have plans to marry somebody that you may be dating right now. But that marriage is not planned for another 2 years because you want to have a big wedding somewhere, Well, in some cases, if this is your path to getting an employment authorization document and moving your case forward, we have some employers that have said, you know what, we will support the marriage-based path in lieu of supporting the employment-based path because of it will get us there. It will provide you with an employment authorization document. Now, note, these cases in the past were taking about 6 months from filing to pretty much getting a green card. Right now, I have cases for marriage-based to a U.S. citizen that are taking a year and a half. Okay, like I think this next week, we have somebody going for a marriage-based interview at our local office. And we started that case almost 2 years ago, which is crazy. So again, there are benefits to this to some degree, but the basic premise has to be, this is something that you plan to do all along. Potentially, you're just accelerating and moving the process forward. And know that is, it's not a solution that is going to get you not even an employment authorization document anytime soon. But if this is all you have, again, we're here to talk about considerations. Some of you, it is going to be returning home, as hard as it sounds and as hard as it could be, because I know for all of you, I know for myself, as an immigrant, once I came to the United States and I accepted my new lifestyle and whatnot, I was not going home. But and in some cases, that is the way. That's what happens. The person goes home. You would have a 60 days grace period after the end of your F1 status, if that is what you have right now. And that 60 days grace period would allow you to explore other options in the United States, potentially change status. Let's say, the marriage base that we just talked about, if that is an option for you, that could happen within those 69 days grace period, but you would have to file your I-130 petition and all of that and the adjustment of status prior to that 60 days grace period. Otherwise, you would be out of status. You can, during that 60 days grace period, you can also go back to school or you can prepare to go home. Okay. If you travel abroad, and actually that happened to us, oh gosh, at the beginning of this year, not necessarily relating to this, but it was an H-1B worker that was terminated by her prior employer. They were just making staffing adjustments that she was laid off. And she had the 60 days grace period. And during that 60 days grace period, she actually applied to other employers, one of them my client, and she was offered a position. However, what happened is she left the United States during that 60 days grace period. So what happens is now she can't come back because she doesn't have a way to come back to the United States. The 60 days grace period closed when she left. So we filed an H-1B transfer, or a new H-1B actually, for her to come back to the United States for our client, her new employer. And that's how we kind of handle that. Okay. Somebody talked about dependents, certainly an option. So if you have a dependent spouse that is on an L1 or an E or an H-1B at a certain level, or there is an asylum process or a TPS process, those are not necessarily dependent, but those are other ways to get employment authorization documents. So it is certainly something to consider. Note that the L2Es and H4 employment authorization documents are going through a little bit of a change right now. The AILA, which is the American Immigration Lawyers Association, filed suit against USCIS last year. So this was litigated for almost a year about, the length. H4s and Ls have been waiting sometimes for, again, over a year to get an employment authorization document, which is ridiculous considering how many openings are there for qualified workers and employers can't find them. And these people are just waiting for USCIS for a year to get an employment authorization document without being able to work. So at the end of that lawsuit, what happened is USCIS agreed to provide employment status for E's and L's incident to their status. Basically, if you have a spouse that is on an L1 or an E or an E2 or E3, they can apply for, not apply, they can, if they travel abroad and they come back, the entry to the US in that status pretty much is evidence that they're employment authorized. So it's incident to status. The H4s are a little different. And you have to be married, your spouse have to have an H-1B, but also has to have an I-140, which is an immigrant petition that has been pending, or not pending, but it's approved. And basically you have not been able to apply for the employment authorization document because you have not been able to file for an adjustment of status. So under certain circumstances, that H4 can apply for an employment authorization document. It can be a little complicated, but again, it's there. Now, I often get the email or the question or see, well, my spouse has an H-1B, so I can get an EAD as an H4, and it's not that simple, okay? Just because you go to H4 does not mean that you're going to get an employment authorization document. I want to make that very clear. There are very few H4s that are allowed to apply for an employment authorization document. And when they do, it takes a while before they actually get it approved. But again, some of these options are nothing is instantaneous in immigration these days. Nothing is as soon as possible. Nothing happens overnight. If that was the case, we would have already explored that with you. So the best path for all of you at the time was the H-1B filing that was done. And now, and again, that is still out there until November of this year. We need to help you explore some of these other options that at the time didn't seem to be the best. Let's see. Okay, someone mentioned employment authorization document. So someone asked, can you apply for an H4 EAD together? And how the Yes, you can. Again, just because you're on H4, you cannot just apply for an H4 EAD. The premise underneath that is that, again, your spouse has an H-1B and has an I-140 that allows you to file for an H4 EAD. And yes, you can apply for an H4 EAD concurrently, but that can take a very, very long time. And again, the timelines, and there's a strategy behind that. But yes, the short answer is you can do it. Yeah, there is a way to expedite, but USCIS is not very good at expediting anything. In fact, I was on the phone with a lady that her mom, it's in Canada, and in a nursing home, and having very difficult issues, and she wants to travel, and they file for an expedite. She's not my client. She came to me as a consult, and they filed evidence of medical records, letter from a physician, requested an expedite from USCIS. USCIS denied it. So it's possible, yes, that you're going to get the result that you want. Not always. Okay. Employment-based green card. Somebody mentioned it. This always also comes up. And in the past, it used to be a better option than it is right now because the processing times were faster. So we could say someone that was on a STEM, so now they have 3 years to potentially get, an H-1B or into a green card. And we may have put them through the lottery in the first year and then decided, what, employment-based may be the best option for them. And we have gone through the employment-based green card process and done it successfully. But the problem right now is the processing times. To get to a step 2 of the green card process where you file an immigrant petition, the I-140, is taking about 2 years. And then from there to apply for an adjustment of status after the I-140 is approved, you could be a year, 2.5. And then the green card is taking about a year. So now we're talking about, who knows, potentially 3.5 years. And if you're from China or India, you know, some of you know, the priority days are like 10 years long. So this is not an option. It's certainly not the option that I would go into with someone from India and China from the get-go, because you would be going to, I mean, you have to keep an underlying status. Just because you file for a green card, that does not allow you. So you file the step 1 and the step 2, that does not allow you to stay in the United States legally or working. And obviously, at the end of the day, that's what most of you want to do. So this option is there. I am going through this process right now with some clients from last year where they had, so for example, we have a TN right now. We're actually 2 or 3 TNs, I think, that we're going through this process with, that they were not selected. And we thought, okay, we're going to put them on the TN as their underlying status. We're going through the green card process, but they're not, they're from Canada. So we will be able to file for an adjustment of status and get them into that pipeline as their underlying status, because the priority day is current. If your priority day is not current, that becomes a problem. Okay. Okay, let's see what I have next. Okay, someone asked, the travel questions come up every single time, no matter what presentation I'm doing. So I had someone ask, you know, can I travel if I was not selected? Let me see if I can move myself out of the way so you can see. Okay, so for most of you, actually, many of this are not going to apply, but this is good to know if you get selected later on. So can I travel? Right now, you could, because you were not selected under the lottery. So you are in whatever status you had before. So as long as you have a valid status, so say you're an F1 student on valid OPT, that is good until, say, the end of the year or till September 1st, whatever. As long as it's a valid status and you have a valid visa in your passport that is going to allow you to come back into the United States, and you can show to USCIS, or not USCIS, CBP, that you're coming back to the United States to either continue to pursue studies or something, then yeah, you can travel. But if you don't have a visa that is valid in your passport, you're not going to be able to enter the United States. And if you have a visa that is current, but you don't have a reason to come back to the United States because you were not selected under the lottery, because you're not going back to school, you're going to have a very difficult time coming back in. So I hope that answers the questions about travel. Okay. All right. So let me just see, so these are the resources that you are going to get. FAQs about not being selected on the H-1B and what options to consider. That is, I think it's a 2-page document that basically summarizes what I just talked about, so that you have something else in writing that you can kind of consider. You're going to get a day 1 CPP video, like I just talked to you, that expands a little more on the day 1 CPPs, the pros and cons, things that you need to be aware of. And in fact, I'm actually doing another video on that, but the one that you're going to get is certainly good enough to give you the background that you need. Do not go into it lightly, and do not go into it with more consideration and doing your own due diligence. And then I'm also including a step-by-step guide for the Form I-9083, and that is for some of you that may be considering or are eligible for the STEM OPT. As part of that, there is a training form that is Form I-983 that needs to be completed by you and your employer, and I get questions about that all the time. So we're going to provide you with, you know, the step-by-step guide if you need it. That is there for you. Okay. And while we actually, the resources are going to be sent to you right after the webinar. Now, what you're going to get, and I really would appreciate it if you just take a few minutes to answer this. Danny is going to send to you a very simple questionnaire as to, you know, did you learn something? So here it is on the chat. Let us know, was this helpful? This is all for you. And by you letting me know what you value and what you didn't value about the presentation, it makes me better for the next presentation, okay? So when I'm actually gonna, while you do that, I'm gonna make sure that I answer all the questions that I have received prior to the webinar. I cover a lot of them, but just, I wanna make sure that I did cover that. Then someone else asked on the chat, what are the chances of getting selected through the second H-1B lottery? How could I answer this? I mean, it's a lottery, okay? And I was going to say, what are the chances that I can become rich tomorrow? Who knows? So next year, potentially in July or November, in the case that there is some kind of priority given those. No, there is no kind of priority. I wish there was. I mean, there were so many things that I wish about the lottery. So don't take this in any bad way, Anna. We've been this lottery is, to me, is it's a disgrace that USCIS cannot figure out how to get work visas for talented people in the United States like you guys. It's beyond me, and that we've been doing this lottery forever is ridiculous. But it is what it is. That's what we have, and you know, many of you are getting the H-1Bs that you need. So it's a lottery. The good thing about it is whoever was going to apply is in the pool. They don't reopen the lottery in July for whoever else wants to apply. It is what it is. It closed in March. You're in that pool. You were not selected in the first round, and you know, they'll take the 85,000 or so, whatever, and they'll process those, and whatever is left, which USCIS have not been very transparent as to the numbers. In fact, I think last year they didn't publish the numbers almost until January. We kind of never, it was like, how many people apply? It was just, it's not very transparent. It's not very fair. But, you know, last year I was very surprised about the numbers of people that were selected in the second lottery, because again, people get selected and don't file, they were laid off, or there was no real job, or the petitions were denied, whatever. So it is an option, it's out there, but you cannot just count on that. You really need to look at all of this other things that we have talked about and explore other things. And if you do get the H-1B, then hey, that's the icing on the cake, and you're a very lucky person. Yeah. So let me make sure that I have everything in here that we have talked about. So one of the questions was there going to be a second lottery? What are the chances of getting selected in the second lottery? How can I enter a master's degree lottery? Well, that's done. I mean, if you had a US master's degree at the time of the registration, I mean, we would have entered you as a US master's degree. And right now, like I said, the lottery is closed. A lot of the questions here were about the options that you would have now and what to do next. And that's kind of what we cover through the presentation. So hopefully, again, this gave you a deeper understanding of the options that you have. I very much appreciate all of you being here. This is a very active and engaged process for you guys. The more you're engaged and the more you learn, the better you're going to be for this and many things. So thank you for being with us. Thank you for what you do. I always say, you know, keep that hope up. When we lose hope, we lose everything. So we're here for you. We're positive about your future. So let's stay positive. I mean, many of you are working for our clients, and they're amazing. And if they have you on their team, they're even more amazing. So stay positive. Thank you for being here. We appreciate all you do and your engagement and partnership. Hope you gave me some feedback, and yeah, this is it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.